Good morning, everybody. This is Steve Fletcher with a Trumpet for My People. Today is September 29th, 2020, and I want to share with you about the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine, a biblical prototype of the final 14 years, including the final 7 years of tribulation. But I do think that within the Bible we have a biblical prototype of a 14-year pattern that comes out twice in the book of Genesis. We know that the book of Isaiah says that the end can be known from the beginning. We come to an understanding of the end times from what is shown to us at the very beginning. And Genesis gives us so many patterns of end time events. And one of these is the 14-year period divided into two periods of 7 that we see twice in the book of Genesis. The first time we see this is in Genesis chapter 29, when Jacob comes to meet his wife Rachel, and as he wants to court Rachel and marry Rachel, he is given a deal by Rachel's father, Laban. And he says, if you work 7 years, or actually Jacob offers to work 7 years for Rachel's hand. It says this in verse 18. Jacob loved Rachel and said, I will serve thee 7 years for Rachel, thy younger daughter. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to thee than that I should give her to another man. Abide with me. And Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed unto him but a few days for the love he had to her. Okay, so we know that the first 7 years went by very quickly. It was a joy to Jacob because of the love he had for her. He didn't even notice all the extra work all the time. It seemed like a few days to him because he was so in love with Rachel and he was so excited to be able to have her. And then the end of the 7 years came, and Laban tricked Jacob and gave him Leah on the night of the wedding. Instead of bringing Rachel into the tent, he brought Leah into the tent. And Jacob had to work another 7 years for Rachel. And it was during the final 7 years that all the trials came up. It was during this time that there were conflicts between Leah and Rachel. It was during this time that Laban began cheating Jacob out of his inheritance, and he tried to steal from him, and Jacob had to do all the maneuvering with the flocks and everything to be able to have an inheritance of his own because of all the work that he had done. But Laban tried to cheat him out of his inheritance and of the value of his work, of his pay. Okay, so it's a 14-year pattern. The first 7 years to receive Rachel, and then the final 7 years that he had to pay off because of this deception that Laban brought upon him. So we have a 14-year pattern of 7 and 7. Now, this is not only seen once; this is seen twice. And the second scenario of the 14 years is even more obvious as far as the 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine, because this is exactly the way it turns out with the dreams of Pharaoh, what's going to be coming upon Egypt, and Joseph interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh, that, he saw these two dreams. Came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. Behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed. They fed in a meadow. Behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed the second time, and behold, 7 ears of corn came upon one stalk, rank and good, and behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind sprang up after them. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and the wise men thereof, and Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret unto them the dreams of Pharaoh. So Joseph ended up interpreting this, and he came up with the solution, right? Joseph came up with the solution that during the first 7 years of plenty, you should stock up. Okay? And I know there's a lot of different opinions on whether people should stock up on supplies. And obviously, it ends up being a personal decision. Everyone should do what is right in their own mind, but there is a biblical precedent for stocking up, and that is the 7 years of plenty, and how to save, to put aside, to save the grain, to be prepared, to prepare for the years of famine. Okay, and so there's a 14-year period. 7 years of plenty. You should use the 7 years of plenty, understanding prophetically where you are, obviously. You can prepare accordingly. And this is the importance of prophecy. This is the importance of these dreams and these understandings that God is giving, because based on understanding what the future holds, you can prepare accordingly, right? Based on what is coming, you can prepare accordingly. By understanding what's coming, you can prepare accordingly. So Joseph told Pharaoh, you should stock up, set aside 10% of the grain during the 7 years of plenty. Stock up and save the grain so that when the years of famine come, you can overcome the famine and survive and not be completely wiped out as a country. And so God was giving them an interpretation of the dreams. But both of these scenarios between Jacob and Rachel and Leah, it was a 7-year period and another 7-year period. And then we have the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. So we have 2 times in the book of Genesis this scenario of 7 years and 7 years. Okay? Now, if we go back to 2009, okay? And this is the reason why, we were watching for the rapture of the church, and what we had understood as the 7 years. The rapture of the church was coming in 2016 and 2017, based on the understanding that I was given with the timeline of Barack Obama. We were watching November of 2016 and the Revelation 12 sign leading up to September 23rd of 2017. Now, here we have a 7-year timeline, okay, from 2009 to 2016. Now, this 7-year timeline was so amazing and so perfect that it brought us from the Nobel Peace Prize of Barack Obama exactly and perfectly through the numbers in the book of Daniel to the Revelation 12 sign beginning date as Jupiter was entering Virgo. Okay, let's go over this again. Now, this is information. you all know I've been sharing since 2016. As all of this was coming together and we were receiving the understanding, since 2016, this is what I have been sharing and what I was sharing. October 9th, 2009, the Nobel Peace Prize of the man of sin, a covenant with many. He came in peaceably. They gave him power through the United Nations. The Nobel Peace Prize is given through the United Nations. And so he came in peaceably, received his covenant on the seventh day of Tabernacles, October 9th, 2009. Adding 1,260 days to that, the man of sin went to the birthplace of Jesus Christ, did not show respect at the grotto of the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and the abomination. There was an abomination because it was a defilement of a holy place. The man of sin standing where he ought not, defiling that holy place, the birthplace of Jesus Christ. That was exactly 1,260 days. And then we add another 1,290 days according to the book of Daniel after the abomination. There'll be 1,290 days. And that brought us again, Obama again in Israel for the funeral of Shimon Peres. Exactly on the 1,290th day from the abomination. And 45 days after that, which brings us to day 1,335, Barack Obama, as a double confirmation, Barack Obama was at the seat of Satan in Berlin, Germany, where the throne of Zeus is. The altar of Zeus, the Pergamus altar of Zeus, is in Berlin, Germany. And on that day, the Revelation 12 sign was beginning as Jupiter was entering Virgo on November 16th and 17th of 2016. Okay, so here is our first 7 years. 7 years of plenty. The reason now why so many are looking for the return of Barack Obama, because the economy flourished, and the prosperity and the lawlessness under the man of sin, but at the same time, the great judgments that were coming had not begun, which did not begin until 2017. And the judgments that began coming upon the earth more so after 2017, especially starting around the time of the great American eclipse. Okay, and here is our second timeline, which during the time of the Revelation 12 sign, from November of 2016 to September 23rd of 2017, during this time frame, then we have the beginning of the 7th week of the 7 years. And this happens to line up with Pentecost on June 4th, 2017. June 4th, 2017, which was the 70th Pentecost of Israel since their rebirth in 1948. And it was the 50-year anniversary of the recapturing of Jerusalem from the Six-Day War on June 5th, 1967. So on June 4th, 2017, we have the 70-year anniversary of the 70th Pentecost of Israel, plus the 50-year anniversary from the Six-Day War and the recapturing of Jerusalem. And this begins. So we have a timeline that brings us 7 years. And here is our timeline of 7 years of plenty. Brings us to the beginning of the Revelation 12 sign, the Obama timeline. And this is what people don't see with the Revelation 12 sign. It's more than just September 23rd, 2017. Because this beginning date lines up with the exact perfect timeline of Barack Obama. And this is what most people do not see. Very, very few people have seen this and have been able to attest to it as far as teaching about the importance of the Obama timeline. Okay, even Renee Moses, after talking about Obama as the Antichrist and the rapture puzzle, she does not have this information, and she does not connect to this. But this is the calling that the Lord gave me, the information the Lord gave me, that brings us to the beginning of the Revelation 12 sign. Really, the crowning of the Antichrist, when you think about it. Okay, it's the Revelation 12 sign. It's the sign in the heaven. And it's not the coming of the Messiah, it's the coming of the Antichrist, because Jesus was already born of a virgin. Okay? So Jesus is not being born again of a virgin. Okay? See, he was already born of a virgin once. Okay, we don't need him to be reincarnated again, and that's not the way he's going to be coming. He's going to be coming in the clouds for his church, right? And so who's being born? It's the birth of the Antichrist. And that is why the timeline of the Antichrist, Barack Obama, brings us exactly to the very day of Jupiter entering Virgo. So here we have a 7-year timeline of plenty. And then within the following year, and during the timing of the Revelation 12 sign, we have the beginning of the second 7 years. June 4th, 2017, confirmed twice by 70 and 50. And this is bringing us to the middle point of Hanukkah on December 14th, 2020. And the beginning of the last 1,260 days, which is the final 3.5 years, the reign of the Antichrist, closing out the 7 years on June 4th, 2024. So from 2009 to 2024, with a little break within this, which was the Revelation 12 sign, we have our timeline of 7 plus 7 years. Okay? 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. The 7 years of the Antichrist, as he is coming onto the world stage, as he received his covenant, as he came into power. And then we have the last trump, which is lining up with what I shared earlier today, is some information from Leeland Jones studies that links up the December 14th, 2020 eclipse with the seventh trumpet. And this lines up with the beginning of the final 3.5 years and the bowls of wrath. And so this time frame is lining up with the last trump. Okay? The last trump, the seventh trumpet. The last trump. And this brings us to the midway point of the 7 years and the Hanukkah eclipse on December 14th, 2020, and the great conjunction of December 21st, 2020. And here we have the signs for the rapture of the church and the beginning of the reign of the Antichrist and the beginning of the final 3.5 years leading to June 4th, 2024. Okay. So I think there are biblical patterns from the book of Genesis in 2 occasions that show us the 7 years of plenty, the 7 years of famine. We wondered why all of this was so wonderful and so perfect, yet at the same time, we didn't see anything end here. But we did see a new beginning in 2017. And so we have 7 years of plenty, and now we are in the 7 years of famine. And as I said, from the timing of both the 14-year periods in the book of Genesis, we can know that the last half of the final 7 years was always the hardest, because it was during the last period of Jacob's service to Laban that he was deceived out of his inheritance, and he had to maneuver everything to be able to leave with something out of Laban's house. And at the same time, in Egypt, when a famine begins, we don't see immediately the effects of the famine, but as the famine continues, and if there's 7 years of famine, we could always see how the last 3.5 years of that 7-year period is going to be the worst, because whatever people had stored up for the first 3.5 years, in the midway point, most people are going to be in great, great suffering for the final portion of the 7-year famine that came upon Egypt. So this is what I wanted to share with you guys, and I pray this helps to explain why we have seen such a wonderful timeline that seemed like it came to nothing, yet at the same time, here we are in the days of the sounding of the 7th trumpet, as Leeland Jones has shared, the days of the sounding of the 7th trumpet, the Revelation 12 sign from the Obama timeline. And now, within the days of the sounding of the 7th trumpet, we have the midway point that we are coming up upon, December 14th, 2020. Okay. So I encourage everyone to stay ready, to stay prepared. Even now, as we have passed the Day of Atonement, coming up on the Feast of Tabernacles, but all eyes are on HANUKKAH, and will soon be on HANUKKAH. For those who have not seen it yet, HANUKKAH is going to be coming into very clear view in the coming days. I pray you guys are all blessed. This is Steve Fletcher with a trumpet for my people, and the sign of his coming revealed.